What's up, everyone? Mike Hall, real estate broker with Red One Realty, and today we're going to be filling out the residential purchase contract for Central Ohio. Let's go. As you go into Dot Loop, make sure that you're loading a buying template and then make sure you autofill, especially the address. That way, it's going to pre populate throughout the document. If it isn't, up here at the top, go ahead and click on autofill and add the data in. As we start going down through here, some of this is really self explanatory. The date is going to be the date that you're filling out the contract. If you auto filled, it should put in the county, it should put in the address here. If not, obviously you'll get that. And you'll need to add the tax parcel address. To get that tax parcel, you'll just come over into the MLS and you'll be able to copy that directly from there and be able to add it into the purchase contract. Then you come down to your purchase price. I always like putting it in here as a number and then also putting it in here as a word. So we are going to purchase this for $1 million. If there's any additional terms and conditions, you'll put that in here, such as a house contingency or anything along those lines. If you're looking for standard clauses, go to red1agent.com, click on resources, and scroll down to the S's for standard real estate clauses. Section 1.2 is the buyer broker compensation. This says that that the seller is going to pay Red One Realty the amount that's in your buyer broker agreement. So if you, for example, have 3% in there in your buyer broker agreement and the buyer wants you to ask the seller to pay for it, put that in here that says, hey, seller, we want you to pay Red One Realty 3% of the sales price when it sells. Section 2, attorney approval clause. I like putting 3 days in here. It just says within 3 days, the buyer can have this reviewed by an attorney. That attorney can make changes and can also have them terminate the contract. Section 3 is whether it's going to be cash or financing. So the first one here, if it's cash, pretty easy. The buyer will pay the purchase price in cash at closing. It's super easy. Whenever you add this, it is a little tricky because when I click on this, I always want to assign it, right? So I don't want it to just say buyer. If I want to assign this and assign it to John Doe, I'm going to make sure I do that and I see his initials there. For this example, it is not going to be cash. So I'm going to assign this to no one. We're going to come down and take a look. 3.1 gets a little bit more detailed. It says, yes, the buyer is still going to pay cash at closing, but also says 3.2 does not apply. So if there is no lender pre-qualification, loan application, if there's no loan commitment, and you don't want the appraisal contingency, maybe you select that one instead of the first cash transaction. You're going to take a look at 3.1. But for most of the buyers we use, it is going to be contingent upon buyer financing. So we're going to go ahead and assign this one, and we're going to assign this to John Doe. Keep in mind, he can sign anywhere it says buyer. So I'm going to come up here and assign that to no one. Make sure this is assigned to no one. And you'll do that anywhere you don't want them to sign. If there's a separate buyer and there's a Jane Doe, you'll assign them here. If there's only one buyer, make sure that's assigned to no one. So now 3.2 shows this contract is contingent upon the buyer obtaining financing. Lender pre-qualification, hopefully you already have that, and make sure that it is delivered with the offer. If you're writing offers without it, I think you're making a mistake. Make sure you get that pre-approval before you start showing them homes. Loan applications, I normally put about 3 days in here. There's no reason they can't go make a loan application quick. Most of the time it's online. If they've already talked to a lender and you have that pre-approval, you know what type of financing it is. Ideally, you're working with someone that is offering a conventional loan. It's just a little bit more stronger in the hierarchy than those FHA and government loans. As you keep going down through here, 3.2C is loan commitment. So we're going to say the lender is going to commit to giving them the loan in about 21 days, but it's always a good idea to ask the lender just to see what they recommend it being set to. As we continue scrolling down through here, 3.2D, is it contingent upon the property appraising? Most of the time, we're going to say yes. We want to make sure it appraises at or above purchase price. If you're in a multiple offer situation, Maybe you say it's not contingent upon that, but keep in mind the buyer's going to have to pay cash to offset that. And it's always a good idea to maximize what that offsetting amount will be. Section 3.3 really says what happens if you don't provide the financing evidence like you say you're going to. Section 4 says taxes and assessments are prorated based on the actual day of closing. Section 4.2 talks about a community development charge. It's fairly rare, but if they installed streets or lighting or something along those lines, and there's a temporary community development charge, you may see that. Section 5 is very important. It talks about fixtures and equipment. So make sure you take a look in here and forget what you learned in school. If you want something to stay with the property, I want you to see it in this list or add it. So here we're going to say that we are going to go ahead and add the fridge, dishwasher, microwave, and stove. Please do not put all appliances. When you say all appliances, people don't know if that includes the washer and dryer or not. If you want the washer and dryer, put it in. Don't use the phrase all. Make sure you list out everything that you want. Helps if I spell it correctly. And the following shall be excluded. If there's a chicken coop or swimming pool or play set and you don't want that in here, make sure you exclude it. If there's any leased items to be included or excluded, you'll add those here. Section 6 really talks about inspections and tests. We always recommend that the buyer does inspections. If they're in a multiple offer situation and choose not to, that's up to them. They will have to sign our buyer advisory saying we encourage you to get a home inspection. So as you come down through here, it gives you a specified number of days. A lot of times we see 7 to 10 days. Again, check with your home inspection company. The home inspection company that we typically recommend is going to be ProSafe Inspections, and it's just prosafeinspections.com. You're able to go there and schedule right online so that you can find out how quickly you can get in there. If you're in a multiple offer situation, maybe you want to schedule sooner rather than later. That way you can go in and get that done. It's important to note that during those 10 days, all inspections have to be done and your buyer has to decide what they're going to do. So if they're going to terminate, they need to terminate in the inspection period. If they're going to write a request a remedy and ask for things to be fixed, that needs to be done by the end of the inspection period. In this example, that's 10 days. They have to have that done. After those 10 days, then the seller has time to respond, and that's the agreement to remedy period. That's the seller coming back saying, yes, I'll fix these things, or something like that. Lots of agents make the mistake and they send the remedy in the remedy period, and that is not how it works. Please send the remedy or terminate in the inspection period to comply with the contract. As we get on through here, if they do terminate, they will need a termination and they'll also need a mutual release. Both can be found in .loop. Section 6.5 talks about condominium and HOA docs. You're going to ask that the seller provide those within 5 calendar days if there is one. Then the buyer will have a review period to be able to review those and decide if they like to continue moving forward or not. Section 7 talks about a home warranty plan. We always recommend a home warranty. We're going to say, yes, the buyer does select a home warranty. We recommend that be provided by 210 Home Warranty. If you're in a single offer, ask the seller to pay for it. If you're in a multiple offer, maybe you have the buyer pay for it. Let the buyer decide what they want to do. And most of the time, that's no more than $650. So if you're filling it out and you're the only offer, but yes, home warranty, 210, $650. D, that says the seller is going to provide a free and clear deed to the buyer. Section 9, title insurance. The seller is also going to provide title insurance to your buyer. Section 10, all the utilities are going to be going with the past owner with the exception of water and sewer. Make sure if there's any outstanding bills, those are taken care of before closing. Earnest money deposit. A lot of times we're going to see it's $1,000 in Central Ohio, and I like doing that 3 days after the expiration of the remedy period. So again, make sure when you're seeing these, they're assigned, because if you send this to a buyer right now, they can sign everywhere it says buyer. So we're going to say, nope, we're going to assign that to no one, and you get the idea. So make sure it's only where you want them to sign. So $1,000, and it's going to be 3 days after expiration of the remedy period. So it really talks about how they get that money back. We can go into detail. Section line 544 here, earnest money receipt. This is once you've collected it. You'll send this page to them. And it says, if they're not satisfied, how they're able to get this money back. Lines 578 here, vitally important. Make sure you put in here sellers, title, company. This eliminates you having to collect money, get money back, and put yourself in liability for holding consumer money. The title company needs it. Let the seller's title company hold it. It's just so much easier. Section 13 is really just definitions through here. I think most of these are pretty self-explanatory. Days after acceptance, it's important to note it starts at 12:01 a.m. the first day following the date of acceptance. 13.2 says time is of the essence, so you're not able to go in here and change the times. If you miss a deadline, you've missed it. Signatures can be electronic. FERPTA is if they're not a U.S. citizen. It talks a little bit about that. Section 14 says they can have an attorney review this. If you recall earlier, there was a 3-day period we recommended. There is Ohio Fair Housing Law. They're going to have to not discriminate. On section 14.3, it says, have you or have you not received the residential property disclosure form? So here we're going to say has not, but if they do have the opportunity to see it, you're going to go into the MLS. And if you take a look up here at the top, you're going to see a document section. You're going to go to documents and maybe the lead-based paint and maybe the residential property disclosure form is in there. And if you have sent it to them, you can go ahead and click has. But for now, we're going to say we have not seen that. We have not seen the lead-based paint. And we have not received the lead-based paint pamphlet. So if we do go into contract or as we continue on, we'll make sure we get those items. Talks about Ohio's sex offender registration law. Talks about concessions. Everything needs to be in writing, nothing verbal. Talks about closing. Talk to your lender and find out when they want to close. I think by default, most people typically put about 30 days to be able to go in and do that. 15.1 talks about dower rights. Ohio is a dower state, so the spouse is going to have to sign if they're the seller. Spouse a lot of times will have to sign if it is a buyer. Just talk to the lender and find out if they require that. 15.2 talks about final verification of condition. I like to put in here about 2 days. That way they can go in here within 2 days prior to closing and confirm that the property is still in good condition. For possession, I like to write the word closing in here. If you're working on your buyer's half, when you close, you want possession. If for any reason you're not able to get it at closing and they want a couple days, make sure it has a date and time. Like 3 days after closing at noon. You need a date and time. If that changes, make sure you come back and update that. Debris and personal property, just all the seller's personal property needs to be out of there. And this offer is open for acceptance. I normally like to give them about a day, and I like to make it somewhere around noon. This says action by the buyer. The buyer need to make sure they read this. It is legally binding. Action by the seller. They need to read this. It's also legally binding. And then your client will sign here and you'll be able to save and share the document. Whenever you submit a purchase contract, make sure you also always submit the agency disclosure outlining who's representing who. And it should always accompany a lender pre-qualification letter. Thanks and good luck on your offer.